So if we go back to our application, refresh the page, we have our data rendering. And then what should happen when we click one of these filters is going to register the ID of the filter, and it's going to perform that hide action on everything that does not equal our ID. So there we go. So now we have our 2 apartments in the Bronx actually available to us. So that's awesome. So let's try clicking through our other filters. What just happened? So we actually put that hide property on our listings, and we had no other part of our code to actually ever reveal that again. So that's one thing we have to consider. So let's go back to our code. And what we want to do every time this filter method or filter function here runs, the first step is we actually want to have all the listings displayed, and then we'll perform our action to hide the specific ones we want. So in order to do that, we're just going to target our same listings class here. And before any of this code runs to hide it, we're going to say, show yourself. So we want access to all of the listings before we start applying these, this hide property on it. Cool. So going back, let's make sure that that works. Okay, Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan. This is awesome. So now we have everything working correctly. So what about all? All isn't a city name. So what happens when we hit all? We lose everything. So why is that happening? Well, it's happening because our city, or in this case, that might not be a city, that's its actual filter, it's all, isn't going to match any apartment listing up here. So it's going to hide everything. So how are we going to handle this one-off situation? Well, similarly to what we've used in other projects, we're going to need a conditional. And the condition in this case is going to be, if your city is not equal to all, then go ahead and run this code. But if it's equal to all, we don't want to do anything. We have all the listings showing to begin with, so we have no code to execute in that case. So we're going to say if city, in this case, does not equal all, then go ahead and run this code. So I've included some links in the show notes to more about these comparison operators, which we're not going to dive into too much right now. But that's some very syntactical JavaScript. So by saying this exclamation point in front of our equal signs here, it's basically assessing that it's not equal to that. So please read up a little bit more on that because they're very useful, especially in our conditional statements. And now let's go ahead and give this a shot and make sure our all filter works correctly. Okay, back to our data. We can filter things correctly. And going back to our all filter, we now have all of our listings back available to us. Awesome. So our filters are working perfectly, except for the fact that when a new filter is selected over here, this active class is remaining on the default filter, which is all. We kept that active class that Bootstrap provides us on the first filter because that's the default when this page is rendered. It's going to show you all the listings. But when a new filter is selected, we would like if that active filter was applied to that. So it would be obvious to the user which filter they're currently on. So doing that, let's go back to our code. And if we look at our index.html, we can see that this active class I've put on the all class purposely. So now, if we actually wanted to remove that active class from the all filter and apply it to whichever filter was selected, we would have to actually work through this in a couple additional steps. So the first step would be, anytime this filter is clicked, remove the active class from any filter. And then we want to add it to the specific filter. So to do that, first we want to actually select all the filters. So using our same selection, this filter is going to look for any element with the class filter. And so we want to say from any elements with the class filter, remove class, and then we're going to actually pass in the string active. So this is going to remove the class from any element with the class of filter. Now we want to add that class to the specific filter that was selected. So we know we have access to that specific filter by using our this. And what we're going to want to just say is add class. And then we want to add that active class to any filter that was selected. Awesome. So now we have some logic around the actual filter, the active class. We're accessing the city. Well, let's actually go ahead and group things more appropriately. So first things first, we're removing the active class and adding it to the appropriate filter. We're going to show all the listings before we perform any of this logic. And then we're actually going to use this city variable in order to target everything that's not in it and set a display none property to that. So it's kind of nice when you're writing functions to just kind of group the appropriate logic together, despite that this function would work no matter which order these things were in. It's kind of nice to clearly see that they're all different concerns. So that's pretty much the last bit of our filtering. We have everything working. So our last step in our application is actually making it so when you select an apartment, you actually use that apartment's address that we receive from the JSON data in order to open it in Google Maps. So let's go tackle that next.